The throne room was a cavernous expanse of obsidian and starlight, a testament to the Kriller Empire's enduring power. But the figure slumped on the crystalline seat of power was anything but enduring. King Xylor, once a titan whose very presence could command legions, now resembled a crumbling monument, his regal posture reduced to a pained slump. His reptilian scales, usually gleaming with fierce vitality, appeared dull, almost as if the light itself shied away from his fading form. Around him, a symphony of whirs and clicks emanated from advanced medical apparatus, their intricate energy fields pulsing weakly, attempting to coax life back into a body that seemed intent on defying their every effort. Holographic readouts flickered with critical data, displaying a chaotic internal landscape that baffled the most brilliant alien minds. A hushed desperation permeated the air, thick with the scent of sterile synthetics and the faint, metallic tang of fear. From the shadows beyond the glowing medical field, the hushed, guttural cries of his subjects were barely audible, each sound a testament to their despair, their hope dwindling with every labored breath of their king. This was the heart of the Kriller Empire, yet its beat was faltering, threatening to plunge an entire civilization into darkness. Miles away, within the bustling diplomatic hub of the unified Galactic Federation, a human nurse named Alara Vance moved with a quiet, purposeful grace. Her uniform, crisp and functional, bore the insignia of Earth's medical corps, a symbol of humanity's growing, if sometimes underestimated, presence in the cosmos. Alara was known not just for her exceptional medical acumen, but for an unwavering empathy that transcended species barriers and a profound, personal faith that she carried like a silent strength. She was part of a delegation, a gesture of goodwill and interspecies cooperation, her primary role to assist with general medical needs within the human contingent. Yet, whispers of the ailing Kriller King had reached even her ears, painting a grim picture of failing hope and mounting despair. King Xylor, the formidable monarch of the Kriller Empire, was indeed in rapid decline. A debilitating illness, utterly unknown to galactic medicine, had gripped him weeks ago, slowly siphoning away his legendary strength. Every conceivable advanced alien medical intervention, from bioregenerative therapies to complex cellular repatterning, had been attempted. Kriller physicians, along with specialists from a dozen other highly advanced species, had exhausted their formidable knowledge. Each attempt had yielded nothing but further frustration, each failure deepening the king's despair. He had finally refused further treatment, a weary resignation settling over him like a shroud. Hope, it seemed, had abandoned the king, and with it, the empire he so valiantly led. The once proud king, who had faced down stellar empires and unified warring clans, was now a prisoner within his own failing body, waiting for an end that seemed inevitable. His refusal was not an act of defiance, but a surrender, a silent admission that even the most powerful being could not conquer the unseen enemy within. The silence of his chambers, broken only by the hum of useless machinery, echoed the profound loss of spirit that now consumed him. For more tales of humanity's impact in the cosmos, remember to subscribe to our channel. The Empire, built on the singular, unwavering strength of its leader, now faced a terrifying instability. Whispers of the king's impending demise had spread like wildfire across asteroid mines and orbital outposts, igniting old rivalries and fueling dangerous ambitions. Kriller society, a rigid hierarchy where leadership was synonymous with absolute power and health, teetered precariously. Without King Xylor's iron grip, the intricate balance of power within the Kriller domains threatened to shatter, potentially leading to a devastating resurgence of the ancient, bloody clan wars. The very fabric of their civilization, deeply rooted in the concept of a strong, healthy sovereign, was unraveling. The military, restless and without clear direction, bristled at the perceived weakness at the top, and rival factions within the High Council began to subtly position themselves for a potential power vacuum, their eyes glinting with barely contained avarice. Amidst this brewing storm, Alara Vance found herself under the scrutiny of the Kriller High Council. These were formidable beings, ancient and steeped in tradition, their scales scarred with the marks of countless political battles. They viewed Alara, a human, with an almost dismissive suspicion, her presence an unwelcome anomaly in their highly advanced, yet culturally rigid, medical sphere. To them, human medicine was rudimentary, almost primitive, relying on soft touch and spoken words rather than the cold, hard logic of advanced bioengineering. They saw her empathetic approach as naive, her faith as irrelevant superstition. Her methods, which prioritized comfort and emotional well-being, were considered unscientific, a foolish distraction from the serious business of advanced physiological repair. The chief medical advisor, a stern Kriller named Zarthus, had openly scoffed at her initial inquiries, his multifaceted eyes conveying a clear message of disdain. He believed human intervention was a waste of precious resources and, more importantly, an insult to their own superior medical advancements. The stakes could not have been higher. If King Xylor were to die, the ensuing power vacuum would inevitably devolve into brutal interspecies conflict. The fragile peace brokered decades ago by the Galactic Federation, a testament to humanity's diplomatic efforts, would crumble. Other aggressive species, ever watchful, would seize the opportunity to carve out territories from the weakened Kriller Empire, sparking a galactic war that would engulf countless worlds. Humanity, relatively new to the galactic stage, had worked tirelessly to foster cooperation, and the thought of such devastation, stemming from a single, unyielding illness, weighed heavily on Alara. She understood that her role here was far more than just medical. It was a matter of galactic stability, peace, and the very perception of humanity's place among the stars. Despite the palpable hostility and bureaucratic stonewalling, Alara refused to be deterred. She began her silent work, initially observing the king from a distance, poring over publicly available medical scans and hushed reports from the perimeter of his guarded chambers. She spent hours studying Kriller physiology, cross-referencing their unique biological markers with known human conditions, searching for any commonality, any overlooked detail. She watched, listening to the subtle rhythms of the palace, discerning the shifts in the king's condition from the reactions of his immediate attendants. Every rejected treatment, every failed therapy, became another piece of the puzzle. Her attempts to speak directly with the Kriller medical staff were met with polite, yet firm, rejections. They were fiercely protective of their king and their traditions, seeing her as an interloper with nothing to offer. The young human nurse, however, possessed an unwavering resolve, a quiet determination that promised to chip away at the formidable barriers of suspicion and pride. She knew that healing sometimes required seeing beyond the obvious, and she was prepared to look wherever necessary, no matter how unwelcome she might be. Despite being sidelined and facing a wall of dismissive indifference, Alara felt a profound, almost visceral sense of responsibility. The king's suffering resonated deep within her, igniting a fierce determination that transcended mere professional duty. She believed fiercely that somewhere, a solution existed, a path overlooked by the purely scientific and technologically driven approaches that had thus far failed. Her human heart, attuned to nuances beyond sterile data, sensed a deeper current of distress, a silent plea that no advanced diagnostic machine could ever fully interpret. The constant rejection, the thinly veiled contempt from the Kriller medical hierarchy, only solidified her resolve. She refused to simply stand by and watch a living being, and an entire empire, collapse when her intuition screamed there was more to be done, a different way to look at the problem. A fragile glimmer of hope unexpectedly pierced through the thick veil of official obstruction. A junior Kriller physician, a younger, less jaded individual named Vyk Tar, had been observing Alara with growing curiosity. Unlike his senior colleagues, Vyk Tar possessed a nascent intellectual openness, intrigued by Alara's meticulous, almost meditative observations and her unwavering, compassionate demeanor, so starkly different from the brusque efficiency of their own medical practitioners. One evening, under the cloak of orbital twilight, Vyk Tar discreetly approached Alara. His multifaceted eyes, usually reserved, held a spark of shared understanding. He presented her with an encrypted data chip, containing a trove of classified medical logs, diagnostic readouts, and even segments of King Xylor's personal physiological research. It was a risky act of defiance, but Vyk Tar believed Alara's unique perspective might just be the desperately needed catalyst. He murmured a brief, almost apologetic explanation, Our path has only led to this despair. Perhaps yours can find another way. Meanwhile, King Xylor's condition continued its agonizing descent. His royal chambers, once a symbol of imperial might, had become a somber tomb echoing with the occasional, rattling cough that punctuated the oppressive silence. He experienced increasingly frequent periods of lucidity, moments where his consciousness would briefly flicker into a horrifying awareness of his own decay, only to be plunged back into a profound, suffocating despair. During these fleeting moments of clarity, he would speak in a voice raspy with disuse and resignation, dismissing every attending physician, every last glimmer of a new treatment with a weary flick of his clawed hand. "My end is near," he would croak, his eyes, once burning with the fire of command, now dull and vacant. He no longer believed in the possibility of recovery, having endured countless failed interventions, each one a fresh betrayal of hope. His belief was that the universe had simply decreed his demise, and no amount of advanced science could alter fate. Armed with Vykatar's invaluable data, Alara buried herself in the intricate details of Kriller biology and the king's specific physiological markers. She worked tirelessly, cross-referencing, reanalyzing, and filtering the vast amount of information through the lens of her human medical training and, more importantly, her intuition. As hours blurred into days, a startling, unexpected hypothesis began to solidify in her mind. The king's symptoms, while manifesting physically, seemed almost too complex, too resistant to purely biological solutions. She noticed subtle patterns in his decline that correlated not just with physical stressors, but with periods of emotional agitation, recorded by the sensitive biomonitors. It was a realization that flew in the face of conventional Kriller medical thought, which rigorously separated mind from body. Alara, however, with her distinctly human understanding of psychosomatic links, began to suspect that the king's debilitating illness had a profound psychological or emotional component, an unaddressed anguish gnawing at his very essence, far beyond the reach of their advanced physical diagnostics. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were treating the symptoms, not the root cause, which lay hidden in the depths of his royal, yet profoundly despairing, heart. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, a carefully orchestrated opportunity facilitated by Vykatar, who had managed to maneuver Alara into a position for a brief, supervised audience with the ailing monarch. Stepping into King Xylor's inner sanctum was like entering a different dimension, a place where time seemed to slow, heavy with the weight of impending loss. The air was thick with the scent of esoteric Kriller flora intended to soothe, yet only added to the pervasive sense of gloom. King Xylor lay reclined on his massive, ornate divan, his scales dull and his formidable frame alarmingly thin. His multiple eyes, usually piercing, were unfocused, staring blankly ahead as if seeing nothing, his breathing shallow and erratic. He appeared to be in a stupor, unresponsive to the medical drones that still periodically administered various compounds. The Kriller guards, their expressions grim, watched Alara with a mixture of suspicion and grudging tolerance. She was an outsider, a human, and her presence was barely sanctioned, a desperation play in a losing game. The Kriller cultural barrier loomed large and imposing. Their society, built on unwavering stoicism and an almost militaristic rejection of emotional displays, made Alara's inherently empathetic approach seem utterly alien, even inappropriate. Where humans sought understanding through vulnerability and shared feeling, Kriller found strength in internalizing all pain, presenting an unyielding facade to the world. To them, Alara's quiet observation, her gentle demeanor, and her lack of aggressive, invasive interventions were baffling. The court physicians, gathered at a respectful distance, muttered amongst themselves in low guttural tones, their gestures indicating confusion and disapproval. They expected a flurry of activity, complex diagnostics, perhaps even a new, desperate surgical proposal. Instead, Alara did almost nothing. She approached the divan not as a doctor prepared to administer treatment, but as a person recognizing another's profound suffering. She didn't speak, didn't touch him, and didn't offer any further medical interventions. Instead, Alara simply pulled a small, ergonomically designed chair, a human design, utterly out of place amidst the Kriller opulence, and sat down beside his throne. She positioned herself just outside the immediate halo of his personal biofield, close enough to feel the subtle vibrations of the room, yet respectful of his personal space. Her focus was absolute. She observed his breathing, noting the subtle hitch in his exhalations, the faint tremor in his clawed hand resting limply on the divan. She watched the minute shifts in his scales, the almost imperceptible changes in the intensity of his multifaceted eyes, even in their unfocused state. She was observing the aura of his suffering, not just the physical manifestations, but the deeper, underlying currents of despair. She allowed herself to simply be present, a silent, unwavering anchor in the stormy sea of his decline. Her own vibrant life force, her quiet strength, contrasted sharply with the fading essence of the king. She noticed the subtle clenching of his jaw, the slight furrowing of skin between his brow plates, tiny, almost invisible signs of internal agitation that the advanced Kriller machines, focused on macroscopic biological functions, would entirely miss. Her very presence was an act of profound empathy, a declaration that he was not alone in his desolate struggle, even if he was not consciously aware of it. The guards, initially rigid with suspicion, softened their posture almost imperceptibly. The initial reaction from others present in the chamber was one of utter bewilderment, bordering on silent scorn. The Kriller court, accustomed to decisive action in grand gestures, saw Alaris, inaction, as a waste of precious time, a foolish indulgence. Zarthus, the chief medical advisor, cleared his throat loudly, a sound intended to convey his profound disapproval. He shifted his weight impatiently, his intricate medical tools clattering softly at his hip, as if demanding to be used. Several other physicians exchanged glances, their facial plates expressing a mixture of frustration and incredulity. To them, this human nurse was doing nothing. She was simply sitting there, a silent sentinel by the bedside of their dying king, offering no diagnosis, no prognosis, no treatment plan. Their advanced scientific minds struggled to comprehend the utility of such a passive approach. They documented her presence, noting the duration, but attributing no medical significance to it. It was a bizarre interlude, an inexplicable deviation from the rigorous protocols that governed their medical practices. Yet Alara remained steadfast, her gaze unwavering, her posture calm and centered. She wasn't waiting for a miracle, she was cultivating an environment for one. She believed that sometimes, the most potent medicine wasn't a compound or a procedure, but the quiet, persistent offering of undivided attention, the silent witness to another being's pain. This was her way of connecting, of showing that even in his profound isolation, he was seen, he was cared for, and he was not forgotten. She understood that healing often began not with doing something, but with simply being. She was planting a seed of human connection in the barren, technologically sterile landscape of his illness, hoping that even the smallest gesture of sustained, empathetic presence might ripple through his clouded consciousness. Alara knew that the Kriller people valued strength above all else, and in their pursuit of physical healing, they had perhaps overlooked the strength that lay in vulnerability, in allowing oneself to be truly seen. Her silent vigil was a radical act of human compassion in a world that had forgotten its power. Alara remained steadfast, her gaze unwavering, her posture calm and centered. She wasn't waiting for a miracle, she was cultivating an environment for one. She believed that sometimes, the most potent medicine wasn't a compound or a procedure, but the quiet, persistent offering of undivided attention, the silent witness to another being's pain. This was her way of connecting, of showing that even in his profound isolation, he was seen, he was cared for, and he was not forgotten. She understood that healing often began not with doing something, but with simply being. She was planting a seed of human connection in the barren, technologically sterile landscape of his illness, hoping that even the smallest gesture of sustained, empathetic presence might ripple through his clouded consciousness. Alara knew that the Kriller people valued strength above all else, and in their pursuit of physical healing, they had perhaps overlooked the strength that lay in vulnerability, in allowing oneself to be truly seen. Her silent vigil was a radical act of human compassion in a world that had forgotten its power. Over the successive days, Elara continued her silent vigil. Each morning, she would enter the hushed royal chambers, pull her simple human chair to the king's side, and simply sit. She didn't speak, didn't touch him, maintaining an almost reverent distance that respected both his suffering and the strict Kriller cultural protocols. Her presence was a quiet, steady force, a constant in the fluctuating chaos of his illness. The hum of the medical machines, the hushed footsteps of the attendants, and the occasional desperate plea from the High Council were the only sounds disturbing the somber stillness. Yet, Elara's consistent, unwavering presence began to exert a subtle, almost imperceptible effect. It was an unspoken communication, a reassurance that someone was there, not to demand anything, not to administer discomfort, but simply to be. She became a silent, living anchor in a sea of despair, her calm energy a stark contrast to the agitated fear that permeated the court. Though the king remained largely unresponsive and seemingly oblivious to his surroundings, his vital signs, meticulously monitored by the array of advanced Kriller sensors, began to show minute, almost imperceptible improvements during Elara's presence. His erratic heart rhythm would steady slightly, his shallow breathing would deepen by a fraction, and the spasmodic tremors that often afflicted his limbs would lessen in frequency. These changes were so subtle that only Elara and her secret ally, Vykatar, who had secretly configured a sublevel monitor to track even the most minute fluctuations, noticed them. The main medical staff, focused on the larger, alarming trends of his overall decline, dismissed these tiny positive anomalies as statistical noise, random fluctuations in a terminal patient. But to Elara, and to Vykatar, they were proof, undeniable evidence that her unconventional approach was having an effect, a testament to the king's subconscious awareness of her unwavering presence. The Kriller High Council, however, remained unimpressed by these unquantifiable, subtle shifts. Their patience, a quality not abundant in their culture, was wearing thin. The political instability was escalating, and the empire demanded concrete action, visible progress, not the inexplicable calm that seemed to emanate from the human nurse. One afternoon, a delegation of the most senior council members, their scales shimmering with impatience, confronted Elara in the antechamber. Their spokesperson, a formidable elder with ancient, scarred scales, delivered a curt ultimatum. "Human nurse," he hissed, his voice a low rumble. "Our king languishes. Your methods produce no tangible results. Show us progress or you will be removed. Your approach is unscientific, borderlining on disrespect to the severity of this crisis." They viewed her quiet vigils as a naive, even insulting, form of inaction, a primitive human ritual utterly unsuited to the gravitas of their sovereign's terminal illness. Elara found herself grappling with an intense inner conflict. The pressure to do something, to conform to the Kriller's expectations of aggressive medical intervention, was immense. Her human training, steeped in active treatment and demonstrable results, tugged at her professional instincts. Yet, her deep conviction, her profound intuition, insisted that a different kind of healing was needed here, one that transcended physical therapies and pharmaceutical compounds. She believed that the king's ailment had roots beyond the purely physiological, a spiritual or emotional wound that required a spiritual balm. Abandoning her silent vigil for a more conventional, but ultimately failed, approach felt like a betrayal of her own understanding, a capitulation to ignorance. The subtle improvements, visible only to her and Vykatar, fortified her resolve, a quiet testament to the efficacy of her unique brand of compassionate care, even as the overwhelming expectation was to see a visible, demonstrable cure. She knew that sometimes, true healing began not with the clamor of activity, but with the profound power of stillness, a serene belief that the body and spirit possessed an innate capacity to mend, given the right supportive environment. She knew that sometimes, true healing began not with the clamor of activity, but with the profound power of stillness, a serene belief that the body and spirit possessed an innate capacity to mend, given the right supportive environment. A remarkable breakthrough in trust occurred during one of Elara's quiet vigils. The chamber was as still as ever, save for the rhythmic hum of life support and the soft, almost imperceptible breathing of the king. Elara sat, as she had for days, her eyes softly focused on his face, her presence a steady anchor. Suddenly, without warning or preamble, King Xylor's multiple eyes, which had been dull and unfocused for weeks, slowly, deliberately, fluttered open. They were still clouded with weakness, but for the first time, they held a flicker of conscious awareness. His gaze, slow and heavy, shifted, sweeping lazily across the gilded ceiling and then, inexplicably, settled upon Alara. There was a moment of profound stillness, an eternity suspended between two beings from different worlds. In his pale, reptilian eyes, Alara perceived not the usual vacant stare, but a nascent curiosity, a spark of recognition, and perhaps, even a fragile, burgeoning trust. It was an unspoken question, a silent acknowledgement of her unwavering presence. Alara didn't immediately react with medical urgency or a flurry of questions. Instead, she maintained her calm demeanor, allowing the nascent connection to solidify. Her voice, when it came, was soft, a gentle ripple in the oppressive silence, carefully modulated to be both soothing and respectful. She didn't discuss his illness, or treatments, or the pressures of the Empire. Instead, she offered words of comfort, simple, universal assurances that transcended language barriers and cultural divides. "You are not alone, Your Majesty," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet imbued with genuine warmth. "We are here. You are safe. You are strong, even in this moment of vulnerability." She spoke of resilience, of the human, and perhaps Kriller, spirit's capacity to endure, to heal, and to find strength even in the darkest valleys. It was a gentle acknowledgement of his suffering, a quiet affirmation of his worth, delivered not as a doctor to a patient, but as one soul reaching out to another. She spoke of the hope that always lingers, even when all seems lost, a sentiment untainted by scientific data or political maneuvering. The subtle yet profound shift in the king's responsiveness did not go unnoticed by Vykatar. The junior physician, who had secretly been monitoring the king's subtle neurological responses, now felt emboldened to advocate more openly for Alara's continued presence. He presented his findings to the High Council, highlighting the inexplicable, though minute, improvements in the king's brainwave patterns and autonomic functions during Alara's vigils. He spoke of the calming effect her presence seemed to have, a measurable reduction in stress hormones that no Kriller medical intervention had achieved. "Her methods, though unconventional, are yielding results that our advanced bioscanners cannot replicate," Vykatar asserted, his voice gaining confidence. "The king responds to her. There is a connection. We must allow it to continue." He framed it not as a mystical cure, but as a beneficial psychological stimulus, a form of complementary care that was demonstrably improving the king's physiological stability. Vykatar's growing support, coupled with the undeniable, though subtle, changes in the king, began to ripple through the rigid court. Whispers of doubt regarding the initial dismissal of the human nurse started to circulate among some members of the court. They had seen the king's lifelessness, the procession of failed specialists, and now, this quiet human was inexplicably drawing him back from the brink. A few of the more open-minded courtiers, those less entrenched in strict tradition, began to question their initial assumption that human medicine was inherently inferior. They had witnessed the king's momentary flicker of awareness, his eyes meeting Alara's, and it was a sight that resonated deeply in a court starved for hope. However, others remained staunchly opposed, their skepticism fueled by pride and a deep-seated distrust of alien methods. Zarthus, the chief medical advisor, visibly bristled at Vykatar's advocacy, maintaining that any perceived improvement was a mere coincidence, a natural fluctuation in the dying process, or worse, a placebo effect that was simply delaying the inevitable. He viewed Alara's continued presence as an affront to Kriller's scientific prowess, a dangerous deviation from their protocols, and believed she was exploiting the king's vulnerability with her unscientific, almost superstitious, practices. The court remained divided, a microcosm of the larger galactic tension, torn between entrenched tradition and the desperate plea for a new, unexpected solution. A fragile, guttural sound, rough with disuse, broke the long, heavy silence of the royal chamber, pulling Alara from her watchful contemplation. King Xylor, his multiple eyes now distinctly focused, not glazed over with the fog of illness, met her gaze directly. His voice, a low rumble that resonated through his massive frame, was raspy and weak, yet carried a newfound intensity. "Why?" he croaked, the word a struggle. "Do you simply sit there?" It was the first conscious interaction Elara had experienced with the king, a direct question after weeks of silent vigil and whispered assurances. His tone held no anger, only a profound, almost childlike bewilderment. He had consumed countless advanced pharmaceuticals, endured invasive procedures, and been subjected to every conceivable high-tech diagnostic, yet this human nurse merely sat. The question hung in the air, weighted with the unspoken history of his suffering and the failure of all conventional approaches. For a moment, Elara felt a surge of nervous energy, knowing this was a pivotal point. She took a slow, calming breath, allowing her answer to form not just from her mind, but from the depths of her conviction. Her voice, gentle but clear, filled the quiet space. "Your Majesty," she began, her eyes never leaving his, "I believe in the power of presence. In comfort. In the understanding that sometimes, the greatest healing isn't something administered, but something nurtured from within." She explained her perspective, drawing on universal human truths. "Our bodies, even yours, possess an incredible capacity for resilience. But that resilience can be broken by despair, by feeling utterly alone in suffering. My purpose in sitting here is to remind you that you are not alone. To offer unwavering support, a silent promise that someone believes in your strength, even when you cannot." She spoke of the peace that comes from being seen, from having one's pain acknowledged without judgment, or the immediate pressure to fix it. She articulated the concept that the mind and spirit profoundly influence the body, a notion deeply ingrained in human holistic health, yet largely alien to the Kriller's purely physiological medical model. This exchange, profoundly simple yet utterly revolutionary within the confines of the Kriller court, bridged a vast cultural gap. King Xylor listened, his ancient eyes tracking every subtle shift in her expression, every nuance of her tone. He, a ruler accustomed to commands, to data, to absolute physical prowess, was confronted with a philosophy entirely new to his experience. The Kriller, in their fierce independence and stoicism, often equated vulnerability with weakness, and emotional expression was carefully suppressed. Yet, Elara's words spoke of a shared humanity, a common ground found not in advanced technology or imperial might, but in the universal experience of suffering and the profound comfort derived from genuine empathy and unwavering support. It was a moment of unexpected connection, two vastly different species finding commonality in the basic needs of the spirit. He might not have fully understood the scientific basis of her belief, but the sincerity in her voice, the steadfastness in her gaze, resonated on a deeper, more primal level. Though still physically weak, a tiny, almost imperceptible spark of hope ignited within the king. It was not the boisterous, demanding hope of a warrior ready to reclaim his throne, but a quiet, fragile ember, carefully fanned by Elara's genuine empathy. He had faced down countless enemies, led his empire through wars and triumphs, but he had never encountered this particular brand of gentle strength. The crushing weight of isolation and the despair of endless, failed treatments had almost extinguished his will to live. But Elara's quiet, persistent presence, her unshakable belief in his innate strength, had pierced through the shroud of his despondency. He didn't feel cured, not yet. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he felt seen. He felt a flicker of possibility, a faint glimmer that perhaps, just perhaps, his story wasn't destined to end in desolation. The raw, emotional vulnerability of his simple question, and Elara's deeply human response, had cracked open a door that all the galactic medical expertise had failed to even touch. Feeling a profound connection blossom in the shared silence, a bond forged in vulnerability and burgeoning trust, Elara made a crucial decision. She recognized that the Kriller king, despite his regal stature and advanced civilization, was deeply suffering from a spiritual and emotional void that no mere physical intervention could fill. It was time, she realized, to share a part of her own human culture, a concept perhaps alien yet potentially deeply resonant. Drawing a quiet breath, she introduced the concept of prayer. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice soft but steady. "In my culture, we have a practice called prayer. It's not medicine or science in your terms, but a conversation with something greater than ourselves, a universe, a guiding spirit, a source of peace. It is a way to find solace, strength, and connection when all else fails." She spoke of it not as a demand or a plea for intervention, but as an act of humble communion, a way to quiet the mind and open the heart. The king, though still weak, listened intently, his multiple eyes narrowing slightly in curiosity. This prayer concept was utterly foreign to Kriller thought. Their highly advanced society, built on logic, empirical data, and verifiable outcomes, had long ago dismissed such concepts as archaic superstition. Yet, the human nurse had shown him a profound, unexpected comfort that their science had failed to deliver. Her words, devoid of medical jargon, carried an undeniable sincerity. Intrigued by this new, wholly alien concept, and perhaps desperate for any source of peace, the king nodded almost imperceptibly. "Perform this ritual then, human," he rasped, his voice still a struggle, yet infused with a burgeoning willingness to explore, a silent admission that his own certainties had offered him no relief. He allowed her, a complete outsider, to perform this deeply personal and culturally specific act in his regal, yet profoundly isolated, presence. There was no understanding in his eyes, only a nascent curiosity, an openness born of utter desolation. Elara's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She understood the weight of this moment, the absolute cultural chasm she was attempting to bridge. Taking her customary seat beside him, she gently closed her eyes, gathering her thoughts, focusing her intent. She didn't pray for a miraculous cure that would defy every law of Kriller physiology. Instead, she prayed for peace. She prayed for comfort to ease the king's profound suffering. She prayed for strength, not just physical strength, but the inner fortitude to face whatever lay ahead. Her words were not audible to the king, but they were deeply felt, pouring from her soul with unwavering sincerity. She prayed for solace, for the lifting of the immense emotional burden she sensed he carried. She prayed for connection, for him to feel less alone in his regal, yet profoundly solitary, existence. It was a prayer of pure, unadulterated compassion, a human plea for universal grace. As Elara prayed, a noticeable, almost palpable sense of calm began to settle in the chamber. It wasn't a dramatic shift, no sudden burst of light or miraculous recovery, but a profound, quiet serenity that replaced the pervasive undercurrent of anxiety and despair. The air itself seemed to grow softer, lighter. The king's agitated state, which often manifested in restless movements and shallow, strained breathing, visibly eased. His multifaceted eyes, which had been darting subtly even when unfocused, became still. His breathing deepened, becoming more regular, more peaceful. The subtle tension in his massive frame seemed to dissipate, as if a great weight had been momentarily lifted from his regal shoulders. The Waikatar, discreetly monitoring the bioreadings from a hidden console, watched with astonished disbelief as the king's physiological indicators, which had been stubbornly erratic for weeks, displayed a marked stabilization. Heart rate steadied, blood pressure normalized slightly, and brainwave patterns, previously chaotic, shifted towards a more restful state. It was an effect that defied all scientific explanation, yet was undeniably occurring before their very eyes. The Kriller guards, stoic and unwavering, felt an unexpected tranquility wash over them, a quiet peace they hadn't experienced in weeks within these hallowed, yet haunted, walls. It was as if Elara's silent devotion had woven a temporary tapestry of peace, enveloping the king and, by extension, the entire chamber in its inexplicable, soothing embrace. The Kriller medical team found themselves in an unprecedented predicament, struggling to comprehend, let alone quantify, the effects of Elara's prayer. Their advanced diagnostic tools, calibrated to measure physiological responses with unparalleled precision, registered undeniable positive shifts in the king's bioreadings. Yet the source of these improvements remained stubbornly outside the realm of their scientific understanding. Heart rate stabilized, neural pathways showed signs of increased coherence, and stress markers diminished, all during and immediately following Ilara's quiet ritual. To their logical, empirical minds, it was an anomaly, a statistical aberration that defied their every established medical principle. It was a tangible positive outcome stemming from an intangible, unquantifiable act, a concept utterly foreign to their advanced scientific paradigm. They could not attribute it to any known Kriller medicine or biological process, leaving them in a scientific limbo, caught between undeniable data and unexplainable phenomena. This perplexing situation led to a significant division within the High Council. Some, particularly the younger, more intellectually flexible members like V.Y. Qatar, viewed Ilara's practice with cautious curiosity, eager to explore this unexpected facet of healing, even if they framed it as a cultural curiosity, or a unique form of psychological conditioning. They argued that any method showing positive results, regardless of its scientific origin, deserved further investigation, especially given the dire circumstances. However, the more traditional and influential elders, led by Chief Medical Advisor Zarthus, saw it as a dangerous, unscientific practice, a primitive human superstition encroaching upon their advanced medical domain. They feared that indulging in such mysticism would undermine the very foundations of Kriller science and potentially expose the king to irrational beliefs. Yet the king's slight but consistent improvements, however inexplicable, served as a powerful deterrent against immediate dismissal. They could not, in good conscience, remove the one element that seemed to be pulling their beloved monarch back from the brink, even if it baffled their most esteemed experts. Despite the ongoing skepticism, the whispered doubts, and the subtle political maneuvering within the court, Ilara's faith remained an unwavering beacon. She continued her daily routine, a quiet ritual of sitting by the king's side, closing her eyes, and offering her heartfelt prayers. Her conviction deepened with each subtle improvement. In the king's condition, each small victory in his battle against despair. She didn't preach, didn't argue, simply acted, allowing the undeniable evidence of the king's slow but steady recovery to speak for itself. Her own belief system, rooted deeply in centuries of human spiritual tradition, provided her with an inner strength that transcended the sterile logic of the Kriller medical bay. She found solace and renewed purpose in her act of devotion, understanding that her presence, imbued with prayer, was providing something essential that no technology ever could. One morning, the chamber felt different. The king's eyes, now clearer and more alert, followed Ilara as she approached. He moved his head slightly, a subtle but significant gesture of engagement. His voice, still raspy but stronger, carried a definite resonance as he spoke, his words distinct and measured. "Human Ilara," he began. "Your prayers, they bring me a strange, unfamiliar peace. I request that you continue them." It was not a command, but a genuine request, a testament to the profound solace he had found in the ritual. The king, who had rejected countless advanced medical procedures and the counsel of the galaxy's finest healers, was now seeking comfort in the simple, spiritual practice of a human nurse. He didn't understand it, couldn't logically explain it, but he felt it, a soothing balm to his tormented spirit that offered a respite from his suffering and the weight of his responsibilities. His request solidified Ilara's purpose, reinforcing her belief that she was indeed on the right path, guided by something far more profound than medical science alone. The king's request to continue Ilara's prayers marked a profound turning point, a deepening of the unique connection that had slowly, almost miraculously, formed between them. What began as silent vigils and whispered words of comfort now evolved into genuine conversations, rich with probing questions and thoughtful reflections. King Xylor, his voice steadily regaining strength, began to speak not just of his physical discomfort, but of his life, his reign, and the crushing weight of leadership he had borne for centuries. Ilara, in turn, listened with an open heart and an empathetic ear, guiding their discussions with gentle inquiries that encouraged introspection he had long suppressed. They spoke of death, not as an end, but as a transition, and of the nature of existence itself, exploring spiritual concepts that were foreign yet strangely compelling to the Kriller monarch. These were not simply exchanges of information. They were dialogues that chipped away at the formidable emotional walls the king had erected around himself, revealing the true source of his prolonged and seemingly incurable malady. Through these intimate talks, Alara began to uncover a truth far more complex than any physical ailment. The king's illness was not merely a biological malfunction, it was a profound psychosomatic manifestation, a physical collapse mirroring a spiritual and emotional one. He spoke, haltingly at first, of a crushing sense of isolation, a burden of responsibility so immense it had become a physical weight. Then, with Alara's patient prompting, he revealed a hidden family tragedy that had haunted him for decades, a loss he had carried alone, in silence, believing that as king, he could not show weakness or grief. Kriller culture, with its emphasis on stoicism and unyielding strength, had effectively silenced his sorrow, forcing him to internalize a grief that had festered, slowly poisoning his spirit, and, ultimately, his body. The unknown illness that had baffled galactic experts was, in essence, a broken heart, a spirit suffocated by unspoken pain and unimaginable loneliness. With Alara's unwavering presence and the soothing balm of her prayers, the king, for the first time in centuries, began to vocalize his sorrow and fears. His initially hesitant confessions evolved into torrents of emotion, tears, a sight unprecedented in Kriller history, streaming from his multifaceted eyes as he recounted the unbearable weight of his personal losses and the unrelenting pressure of ruling an empire. This emotional release was a cathartic storm, breaking through the dam of suppressed feelings that had contributed so significantly to his physical decline. It was a painful, yet ultimately liberating, process facilitated entirely by Alara's empathetic presence, her non-judgmental listening, and the spiritual comfort of her daily prayers. The sterile medical chamber transformed into a sanctuary of healing, not just for his body, but for his deeply wounded soul. The Kriller present, particularly Vyk, who remained a constant, discreet observer, and even the now less skeptical medical staff, were astonished by this raw display of emotion. The sight of their formidable, stoic king weeping openly, expressing sorrow and fear, was utterly alien to their cultural norms. Kriller society revered emotional suppression, viewing it as a cornerstone of strength and control. To witness their monarch unraveling, yet simultaneously drawing strength from this process, was a revelation. It challenged their ingrained beliefs about leadership, power, and the very nature of health. They saw that Alara's methods, initially dismissed as primitive, were tapping into a fundamental aspect of being that their advanced science had overlooked. This unexpected vulnerability from their king, facilitated by a human nurse, implicitly questioned the very foundations of their Stoic culture, suggesting that perhaps true strength lay not in concealing pain, but in acknowledging and healing it. A new treatment path. Alara realizes that the king's physical illness is largely psychosomatic, a result of his emotional and spiritual burden. Integrating human and alien medicine, working with the junior Kriller physician, Alara devises a new treatment plan that combines traditional Kriller physiological support with human-inspired emotional and spiritual care. Public reaction, news of the human nurse's unique approach, and the king's slow but steady recovery begins to spread throughout the Kriller Empire, sparking fascination and hope. The High Council's shift, faced with undeniable evidence of improvement, even the most skeptical council members grudgingly acknowledge Alara's impact. Alara, now more than ever convinced that the king's physical deterioration stemmed predominantly from his profound emotional and spiritual burden, began to articulate a revolutionary new treatment path. His unknown illness was, as she had suspected, largely psychosomatic, a body reacting to a spirit in deep anguish. She explained to Vyk, her invaluable ally, that while traditional Kriller medicine focused on the physical, the missing piece was the holistic care of the being, integrating mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. This wasn't about finding a new drug, but about finding a new way to live, to process, to heal from within. The king's emotional release had been the critical first step, opening the door for genuine convalescence. Working closely with Vyk, who proved to be not only an open-minded physician but also a shrewd diplomat within the Kriller medical hierarchy, Elara began to devise a comprehensive treatment plan. This innovative approach seamlessly combined the best of traditional Kriller physiological support with human-inspired emotional and spiritual care. Kriller bioregeneration technology was still vital for addressing the severe physical toll his illness had taken, but it was now augmented by daily sessions of guided meditation, which Elara translated into Kriller terms as focused mental stillness, to promote inner peace and mental clarity. There were also prescribed periods of structured reflection, encouraging the king to continue processing his past traumas, no longer alone, but with Elara's compassionate presence. Viwaikatar, drawing on his advanced knowledge of Kriller neurobiology, even developed subtle neural stimulants designed to gently encourage positive emotional responses and regulate mood, working in tandem with Elara's spiritual guidance. It was a true synthesis of two vastly different medical philosophies, each enriching the other. News of the human nurse's unique and unorthodox approach, coupled with the king's slow but undeniable recovery, began to ripple outwards from the royal chambers, spreading like wildfire throughout the vast Kriller Empire. At first, it was incredulity, then whispers, and finally, a surge of fascination and hope. The Kriller populace, accustomed to stories of their king's unwavering strength, now learned of his vulnerability, and of the unexpected solace he found in the presence of a human, whose methods were deemed primitive. Citizens, from the stoic warriors of the northern plains to the intellectual elites of the orbital cities, debated the implications. Holographic news feeds, usually filled with reports of galactic trade and military maneuvers, now prominently featured discussions about the king's miraculous turnaround and the mysterious human who had brought it about. This wasn't just a medical success story, it was a cultural phenomenon, sparking unprecedented dialogues about the nature of strength, healing, and empathy. Faced with the undeniable, measurable evidence of the king's improvement, his vital signs stabilizing, his consciousness returning, his engagement with his advisors increasing, even the most skeptical members of the High Council were forced to acknowledge Elara's profound impact. Zarthus, the chief medical advisor, though still visibly uncomfortable with the unscientific aspects of Elara's methods, could no longer deny the tangible progress. His protests grew weaker, his arguments less fervent, as the king's health steadily trended upwards. The political imperative to act was now outweighed by the undeniable success of Elara's unconventional care. They grudgingly, and often silently, conceded that this human nurse, with her strange rituals and even stranger empathy, had achieved what their most advanced technology and countless specialists could not. The question shifted from if she should be removed to how they could learn from her, hoping to incorporate these unexpected pathways to healing into their own revered medical practices. Over the course of many weeks, King Xylor made truly remarkable progress, a testament to the integrated care Elara and Viwaikatar had implemented. His formidable Kriller physiology, once ravaged by an illness that had drained his very life force, now slowly but steadily regained its former strength. He began to walk again, initially with assistance, then with a slow, deliberate stride that hinted at his previous power. His appetite returned, and the rich, nutrient-dense Kriller sustenance started to fill out his once emaciated frame, making his scales gleam with a healthier luster. More importantly, he began to actively engage with his advisors once more, his mind sharp and clear, though still often shadowed by a thoughtful introspection that had not been present before. The old fire of command slowly rekindled in his multifaceted eyes, tempered now with a deep wisdom and an unexpected, almost palpable, understanding. He was still weaker than the Titan he had been before his illness, but he was undeniably returning, a phoenix from the ashes of his despair. Elara's role within the royal court had matured far beyond that of a mere nurse. She was no longer just the human who sat and prayed. She had become a trusted confidant to the king, an invaluable advisor whose unique perspective and empathetic insights were sought on matters both personal and imperial. Her understanding of the king's emotional landscape, coupled with her unwavering compassion, had forged a bond that transcended species and station. She served as an unofficial ambassador of human empathy, silently demonstrating the profound impact that genuine connection and spiritual care could have, even in the most technologically advanced of societies. The Kriller court, initially wary, now regarded her with a mixture of respect and quiet fascination, recognizing her profound influence on their beloved sovereign. The most anticipated event, however, was King Xylor's public appearance, his first since the onset of his debilitating illness. It was a momentous occasion, planned with meticulous care and broadcast across the entire Kriller Empire, and far beyond its borders into the wider Galactic Federation. The Grand Throne Room, once a place of hushed desperation, now pulsated with a renewed sense of anticipation and hope. When King Xylor finally emerged, walking slowly but resolutely towards his throne, a collective gasp swept through the assembled dignitaries and the countless viewers tuned into the holographic feed. He was weaker, certainly, his gait not as commanding as it once was, but his presence was undeniable, his resolve radiating outward. And subtly, almost imperceptibly, just a step behind him, stood Alara Vance, her quiet dignity a stark contrast to the regal splendor surrounding them. She was not in the limelight, but her steady presence was a silent acknowledgement of her crucial role in his return. This moment became an incredibly powerful symbol, reverberating throughout the Kriller Empire and beyond. It was a testament to unity, not just between the king and his people, but between two vastly different species. It showcased the unexpected strength found in compassion, demonstrating that true healing could arise from the synthesis of advanced alien science and simple human empathy. For the Kriller, it rekindled hope, proving that even their most powerful leader was not invincible to suffering, but could find redemption and renewed purpose through vulnerable connection. For humans across the Galactic Federation, it was a source of immense pride, a powerful affirmation of humanity's unique capacity to offer solutions that transcended technology, impacting both Kriller and human perceptions of interstellar relations. The king's recovery, spearheaded by Alara's quiet courage and profound faith, transformed him from a symbol of failing power into a beacon of resilient hope, her presence beside him a living testament to the power of shared humanity in an expansive, diverse universe. The king's recovery, spearheaded by Alara's quiet courage and profound faith, transformed him from a symbol of failing power into a beacon of resilient hope, her presence beside him a living testament to the power of shared humanity in an expansive, diverse universe. King Xylor, once a shadow of his former self, had not merely recovered, but had done so completely, regaining his full strength. The physical vitality that had defined his legendary reign re-emerged, his scales once again gleaming with a robust, healthy luster, his movements imbued with the powerful grace of a seasoned warrior. More significantly, his recovery extended far beyond the physical. He was mentally sharper, emotionally more attuned, having confronted and ultimately vanquished the inner demons that had festered beneath his regal exterior. The emotional release Alara had facilitated had purged the hidden sorrows, leaving him not just healed, but fundamentally transformed, a being who understood vulnerability as a source of strength, not weakness. He now governed with a newfound wisdom and a profound depth of compassion that had been absent before his illness. The lessons learned from his near-death experience and Alara's unique, empathetic care reshaped his approach to leadership. He listened more intently to the pleas of his subjects, understood the nuances of suffering, and implemented policies that reflected a broader, more inclusive vision for his empire. His decrees, once solely driven by strategic logic and military might, now often included considerations for the emotional and spiritual well-being of his diverse populace. He became a king who led not only with power, but with understanding, his reign marked by a new era of introspective leadership. The empire thrived under his guidance, its citizens feeling a deeper connection to their monarch than ever before. In recognition of her extraordinary efforts, the Kriller Empire bestowed upon Alara their highest honor, selecting a ceremony of ancient tradition usually reserved for Kriller heroes of immense military or cultural significance. It wasn't merely for her medical prowess, though that was undeniable in its unconventional success. It was for her profound humanity, for demonstrating a path to healing that transcended their most advanced technologies and their deepest-seated cultural biases. The medal, forged from a rare, luminous metal found only in the heart of Kriller space, was presented to her by King Xylor himself, his multifaceted eyes conveying a gratitude that words alone could not express. He explained during the ceremony that Alara had not just saved his life, but had shown his entire empire a new way to understand strength, compassion, and the interconnectedness of all beings. This remarkable incident, centered around the unlikely bond between an alien king and a human nurse, solidified diplomatic ties between humanity and the formidable Kriller Empire to an unprecedented degree. The alliance, once fragile and based on mutual strategic interests, now rested on a foundation of genuine respect, shared understanding, and an appreciation for the unique contributions each species brought to the galactic community. Humanity, once perceived as a relatively young species with limited technological prowess compared to older civilizations, was now recognized for its profound capacity for empathy, its spiritual depth, and its unwavering belief in the power of connection. Alara's story became legendary, a beacon demonstrating humanity's true impact in galactic society, proving that the most powerful force in the universe might not be technological might or military strength, but the simple, enduring power of the human heart. It revealed that sometimes, the greatest influence came from daring to be different, from offering a solution born of quiet faith and unwavering compassion where all else had failed. With King Xylor's full recovery and the Empire now solidly back on its feet, radiating a renewed sense of purpose and stability, Alara Vance knew her mission was fulfilled. The time for her departure had arrived. Her diplomatic assignment was complete, and while a part of her heart had become deeply intertwined with the fate of the Kriller King and his people, her own world, and indeed her own service, awaited her return. She had brought a profound healing, a quiet revolution, but her place was not to reign or to endlessly advise. Her work was done, and the Kriller Empire, fortified and transformed, no longer needed her immediate, constant presence. She began the quiet preparations for her journey back to Earth, a bittersweet anticipation coloring every packed medical supply and every final consultation with Vykatar, who had become a trusted colleague and friend. A poignant farewell unfolded in the very chambers where their extraordinary journey had begun. King Xylor, standing tall and resolute, his scales gleaming with health, met Alara not as a patient, but as an equal, a dear friend. His multifaceted eyes, once clouded by despair, now held a deep, unwavering gaze of profound gratitude and respect. He clasped her hand, his massive clawed fingers surprisingly gentle, and spoke, his voice strong and clear. "Alara Vance," he rumbled, a warmth permeating his tone. "You came to us as an outsider, unseen, unheard. You left us changed, not just myself, but my entire empire. You showed us a strength we had forgotten, a path to healing we had dismissed. My debt to you is immeasurable, my friendship eternal." Alara, tears welling in her human eyes, returned his gaze with equal warmth. "Your Majesty," she replied softly, "you taught me that even the strongest can bend, and that true leadership lies in vulnerability. Our bond, forged in suffering and solace, will always remain." It was a moment suspended in time, a testament to an impossible friendship, a bridge built between species by the sheer force of empathy and a shared human spirit. Alara's story, the tale of the human nurse who refused to give up on an alien king, quickly became a legend, whispered in the council halls of the Kriller Empire and recounted with awe in diplomatic circles across the galaxy. It was a narrative that illustrated, with stunning clarity, that sometimes the most advanced solutions to the universe's most complex problems were found not in cutting-edge technology, or in the cold, hard logic of science, but in the surprisingly simple, enduring power of human connection, the unwavering strength of faith, and the profound, transformative potential of genuine care. Her act of simply sitting, of patiently being present, and her quiet prayers had resonated deeper than any medical intervention, proving that the heart could heal where machines failed. It was a powerful reminder that humanity's greatest contribution to the cosmos might not be its starships or its scientific advancements, but its inherent capacity for compassion, its ability to see the spirit beneath the scales, and its enduring belief in hope. King Xylor, profoundly changed by his near-death experience and Alara's unique approach, vowed to share the hard-won lessons he had learned. He understood now that true leadership involved not just governing bodies, but nurturing spirits. His pronouncements to his high council and his people spoke not only of strategy and power, but of empathy, of understanding the unseen burdens of others, and of the vital importance of emotional and spiritual well-being. He initiated cultural reforms aimed at fostering greater openness, encouraging his subjects to seek solace and support when needed, rather than internalizing their pain in stoic silence. He began to challenge the ancient Kriller norms, slowly but surely steering his empire towards a future where strength was defined not by the absence of vulnerability, but by the courage to embrace it. He promised to foster a more empathetic and understanding future for his people, a legacy born from the quiet presence and profound prayers of a single human nurse. King Xylor, profoundly changed by his near-death experience and Alara's unique approach, vowed to share the hard-won lessons he had learned. He understood now that true leadership involved not just governing bodies, but nurturing spirits. His pronouncements to his high council and his people spoke not only of strategy and power, but of empathy, of understanding the unseen burdens of others, and of the vital importance of emotional and spiritual well-being. He initiated cultural reforms aimed at fostering greater openness, encouraging his subjects to seek solace and support when needed, rather than internalizing their pain in stoic silence. He began to challenge the ancient Kriller norms, slowly but surely steering his empire towards a future where strength was defined not by the absence of vulnerability, but by the courage to embrace it. He promised to foster a more empathetic and understanding future for his people, a legacy born from the quiet presence and profound prayers of a single human nurse. In the years that followed Alara's departure, King Xylor reigned with an unprecedented depth of wisdom and a far more profound understanding of both his people and himself. The Kriller Empire, once teetering on the brink of internal strife and external conflict, entered an era of remarkable peace and burgeoning interspecies cooperation. His leadership, now tempered by compassion and the acknowledgement of emotional intelligence, inspired a societal shift. Kriller scientists began to explore the psychosomatic links that Alara had intuitively understood, integrating mental and spiritual health into their advanced medical practices. Old rivalries among clans softened, replaced by a shared sense of purpose and a newfound appreciation for diversity, both within their own species and among their galactic neighbors. The king, once an untouchable, stoic figure, became a beloved monarch, renowned not just for his might, but for his profound empathy. He regularly spoke of his human healer, weaving Alara's story into the very tapestry of Kriller legend, ensuring her legacy of compassion would endure for generations. Alara, having completed her remarkable journey, eventually returned to Earth, her heart full from the indelible marks she had left on an alien civilization. The quiet hum of Earth's atmosphere, the familiar scent of rain, and the embrace of her own people were a welcome balm after her extraordinary cosmic odyssey. She resumed her work as a nurse, her experiences on the Kriller homeworld shaping her practice in subtle yet profound ways. She carried with her not just memories of glittering alien palaces and advanced technologies, but the quiet knowledge that she had proven the immense, often underestimated, power of human empathy in a future where technological advancement sometimes overshadowed fundamental human truths. Her simple act of sitting and praying, born of faith and compassion, had not only saved a king but had, in essence, saved an empire from itself, guiding it towards a more enlightened and connected future. Her story, shared quietly among her peers and eventually becoming part of galactic diplomatic lore, served as a powerful testament to humanity's unique contribution to the cosmos, the gift of sincere, unwavering heart. If this incredible journey of empathy and healing touched your heart, please consider liking this video and sharing it with a friend who appreciates tales of human impact in the vast cosmos. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories that explore humanity's place among the stars. Check out our next video, where we dive deep into the philosophical implications of interspecies faith and how cultural exchange reshapes galactic understanding. Your support helps us continue bringing these inspiring narratives to life.